We're here basically to just give you some information. A lot of people have asked, how do we come and speak at the zoning meeting? So I want to just give you a little primer about how we need to do that. They had a public hearing. A lot of us stood up and spoke, and they decided to hold it over and allow people to talk only about traffic. So we have a lot of studies and information that really guided us in opposing this project as it is. It's 103,000 square feet. It's, if you look over at the lower drawing and blue, you can see how huge it is in scope compared to all of the surrounding buildings.
That
was in 2013.
We made in 2013, right. And the full amount was 108,000 square feet, and now it's listed as 103,000 square feet. So there's a big difference there, 5 square feet.
Can you give us a reference, a visual reference? What are the buildings are that size that we know of in this area?
Well, if you look at the map, nothing. Closest thing would be on this stretch. I'm going to start getting technical really quickly. On this stretch, Stop and Shop is rather large, but it's zoned to be large because of where it is. So our plan of conservation development, based on that, and I might give you this information. Let me just say,
yeah, our plan of conservation and development
calls for 25.
Here's what's interesting: the regulations for the zoning
B2
were written at least in 1991 for B2 zoning, which allows a 25,000 square foot store in the particular area that the BJ's is in. And then in 2006, they did a study called the Westport, I think it's Main Ave Corridor Study. And in that, they decided there was too much traffic. They didn't want big box development of this sort. They wanted smaller development, more small stores, small businesses, and so on. And so that study was added into the plan of conservation and development, which is from 2009. And that study suggested that the size of a store should be 10,000 square feet. So now the original zoning regulations are 25,000 square feet, and something like this comes in with what's called a special permit. And in this case, you know, if you take the size of the whole edifice, it is essentially 4 times the size that's allowed. But what they're telling you is that there's an 85,000 square foot big box store in it, and that they want to have a restaurant and possibly a wine store or something in the front buildings. But the thing about zoning is this can be okayed at 103,000 square feet, and they could turn around and say, you know what, we could only get the big tenant, so we want the whole store to be that. I mean, that's a possibility. That's not what it's being sold as. It's being sold as, you know, these 3 retail things that add up to about 96,000 square feet. So, sorry.
So over on the table you'll see things that she referenced. This is the description of the policy recommendations. It's an excerpt from the Westport Norwalk Main Corridor Study. That's just a single sheet. And this went into the plan of conservation development. So if you look at, and that's a lot of paper, standards for special permits. So what constitutes a special issue that, you know, this deserves to be bigger and better than our B2 zoning? K says compliance with the zoning code and plan of development effective February 15, 1991. And that's based on this Westport North Main Corridor Study. So this supports this. Their lawyer stood up and went through all of these things that have to be followed in order to be part of the special permit. existing land use in the area. If you look at how big that is in relation to the other buildings surrounding, it doesn't fit in, which is not necessarily a traffic issue, but what we find as being the traffic issue is who's going to shop there. So you know that, actually I've gotten a lot of emails from Wilton people and Buchanan people who are very excited about having a big box store like BJ's come, but you know, they want to come because they don't want to have to go down and deal with the traffic down on Route 1 where Costco is. So.
But they also want to allow the built in their town.
Right. So, you know, Wilton can have a BJ's. We'll be happy to shop there, I'm sure. Anyway, so the traffic issue for us is that it's regional traffic. The draw is regional. People are coming from Westport, Wilton, New Canaan, Darien, because they probably don't want to go to the Costco because they're crowded. So it's a regional draw, it's not a local draw. So if they came and they said we want to do development, even if it was a special permit for a little larger, that would kind of facilitate what we needed in the area, that would be fine. We wouldn't be here in opposition of it. Does that make sense? So what do we do about it? This is the next thing. So on Wednesday, on the 15th at 7 p.m. at City Hall, we are allowed to come and speak to our concerns surrounding traffic. We have back there, we have a peer review. The city hired a company to look at the traffic study and say, yeah, this looks okay, and made the developer pay for it. They didn't pay for a whole traffic study, so a lot of people are misinformed thinking that the city has their own traffic study and the developer had. It's almost one and the same. There's a traffic study and then somebody doing a peer review. NASH has we hired in 2013 independent traffic company, Adler. We paid about $10,000. Somehow that never got into the picture.
It never got into the picture because it was withdrawn, but there was, what he studied were, he also studied the traffic study done by the applicant, and then he studied the plans that fed into this area. And that was what he wrote on, and what he basically said, and you have it, and we've gone back to Adler, and they're writing a new study.
2017.
But it's going to have a lot in common with the old study, and essentially the study doesn't extend far enough. It's too small.
The developer's traffic study.
Yes, the
applicants.
applicants.
To Linden and down to
where you get off of
Dunkin' Donuts. We don't know
Seven.
if we love Dunkin'
Yeah,
Donuts.
down to New Canaan Avenue where you get off of 7. That area of road has 25,000 cars on it every day. 25 or 26. I actually think he said 26. They are looking at 2 particular hours that they study. One is Friday afternoon, I think it's 5 to 6 o'clock. And they are expecting to put on the road 450 more cars during that period. And that wasn't, I'm sorry, that's Saturday. Saturday from noon to 1, they expect to put 450 new cars, and I think it was something like 390 cars on the Friday from 5 to 6. That's what they're expecting. But
there's no impact because they're going to be able to get the states to time the lights properly.
They can't do it now.
what they are leaving out.
They can't do it now.
Oh, do they still have the guy in Hartford watching the monitor?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, that's gonna work.
Right. And you know.
Well, it worked for CVS. It worked for Dunkin' Donuts. Right? Saying they were going to time them properly. I don't know. They, you know.
Plus, can I just
We're
say,
doing letters,
they, this is what they say to the zoning commission, that it's only gonna add this many cars during this period of time. They're not addressing how many cars are gonna be added during the rest of the time. So that is,
Well, and the other thing
That's
is,
a problem.
they take and
Yeah.
they do their job. Part of it is regional traffic, as we know, draw cars, you know, huge SUVs, because you gotta get the big paper towel thing.
Yeah.
Are very different than people that happen to be on the road and are gonna just drop in to one business and then the other. When you go to a BJ's, say, you buy stuff, you get your cold stuff, you bring it home. So you're gonna come from Wilton, you're gonna come and shop, fill it up and go home. You're not actually gonna stop at the car wash necessarily, because we know as we live here, there's a big backup all the time when you wanna push the car. You're not gonna stop and get gas, because, you know, unless it's really cheap, it's kind of hard to turn there already, because it's very popular. So it will have an impact. My big concern, and there's a lot of them, and I think what we want to do is say, speak to what you know. Please come Wednesday, speak to what you know. I know, because I teach here in Norwalk, I am always behind buses. There are several bus stops on Main Avenue. It's not like Route 1. It's a very small, narrow street. Buses stop there, wheels buses. If you take 2 hours, I counted up, there are 41 stop. There, at one stop, 41 buses throughout the day on a weekday stop there. 41 times a wheel bus stops. And there's one right next to this site. So not only are you stopped, but the wheels bus you're going to be behind, the school buses you're going to be behind. If you've ever sat there behind a wheels bus and waited for everybody to get off and couldn't go around, speak to it. If you ever, like me, you're behind the school bus watching all the kids get off into the CVS parking lot, speak to that. So really the way to do it is to stand up and say, I live at such and such an address.
And
I live on Perry Avenue. I'm opposed to this because.
And the study doesn't cover
Right.
this.
And
The
based
traffic
on, you know, if you can reference one of the standards for a special permit, and just, you know, it can be like a 10-second thing, you know, speak, I think they give you like 3 minutes, but it can be very short. It's really important that a lot of people get to make it personal to them. Does that make sense?
You know, with the 3 schools up there, West Rock
West
and,
Rock, yeah.
and All Saints, and
Right.
there's another one up there, Winston. When those kids,
And
there
Cedar
are
Wood.
there are kids old enough that come down and use the crosswalk right there too. You know that's got to be a concern. You know, when school lets out in the
I can
afternoon,
personalize that for me
I
because.
think somebody should
yeah.
sit there and take a picture of those kids trying to cross the street when the traffic is going by, you know, at 3, you know, whatever time they get out in the afternoon, because that's got to be a really dangerous spot for them, because people just don't stop.
I was just telling somebody before, the reason I became really concerned about this personally, I had a daughter that went to West Rocks, and the big thing for the West Rocks kids was to walk down and walk across the street to go to Peach Wave, across Main Avenue. A lot of them, right? It's like the big thing for the middle schoolers. And my daughter came home one day and she said, oh my God, we almost got killed. And I was thinking, it's not the traffic, even though it seems like a small road, you know, narrower road. It's not really the traffic that you want people walking across. And I know that we've had people killed trying to cross, right? I know if you lived in Laura Raymond, you would know if there was somebody from Laura Raymond killed crossing the street. Yeah.
I have a question. We live on Perry Avenue, right by the bridge,
Yeah. Right.
close to the tavern,
Right. The triangle.
and we are seeing the traffic. And one thing which is remarkable is that there are more and more as many trucks as there are cars moving on Perry Avenue.
Yeah.
In the reports on the traffic for this project, we hear a lot about cars. What about trucks? Because those people won't have any warehousing space there.
Right.
So there will be trucks day and night to supply.
Let me just tell you what our concerns are based on their project. Is that as trucks leave this site, They say the trucks are supposed to go north. We all know that BLT is projected, they've got approved for 1,400 living units already. They're planning for 5,000.
Where is BLT?
Oh, I'm sorry, Glover Avenue. Thank you. I'm like, you get so in the weeds about it. So these trucks are going to be going up. We know that all of the people from Glover Avenue are going to be coming out onto Main Avenue there. As these trucks are going north, they're supposed to come out of that site, go north all the way up to Grist Mill to get onto 95. We know that if they have GPSs that aren't specific to trucks, that it'll be taking them, take a left on Perry, take a left on Glover, take a right on Linden up to West Rocks and down. They need to get back to 95. Our concerns in Silvermine specifically are they would, if they go up and take a left on Perry, they'd be pulled toward James Street, and that bridge cannot support the weight of the truck. We know that. DPW. Yes?
Also, wouldn't they have trouble clearing the Merritt Parkway Bridge? Some of the higher
Yes.
trucks?
Yes.
I think the one on Main Avenue is all right, but
It angles
Yeah,
are
already.
If
possible.
you're in
They
the
do
right-hand
have to
lane,
come.
you're gonna hit.
I'll find out. I'm on the Merritt Parkway Conservancy, so I can find out if we don't clear the trucks. But, you
So
know,
if they don't go James Street, they go up next
on
to your
your
house.
regional business, I typed in Starbucks in Canaan, though it's on Park Avenue, just to see what way people would go. It sends you to the Merritt Parkway, and you take the Merritt Parkway, you know, they're way on the other side of New Canaan Avenue. So it sends you by your GPS on the Merritt Parkway to the most dangerous cloverleaf there is on the Merritt Parkway. I believe it is the first one ever built in the United States. And it was built for cars that were smaller, and they were going, what, 35 miles an hour, something like that. And it's a very high accident place. So that's one big negative. Then you have the whole Glover Avenue group coming out. If they're going south, they're not going to come out by Grist Mill Road, because you can't get out of that road at Grist Mill when there's a lot of traffic, because everybody just goes right on red. I mean, they just turn right all the time. So they're going to come out by the Merritt Parkway. So then you've got another jam. This is not covered by any of these studies. And then you've got people who are to the east of New Canaan Avenue, and I put that in. They come down Silvermine Avenue and go across Broad Street. So that's right down the middle of Silvermine. So I think, you know, we're looking at a study that's not really looking at our roads. Here's another thing. They're telling us of these, let's take Perry Avenue. They're telling us that 5% of the 450 cars are going to come out of Perry Avenue, and that this is Galante said this. He's the applicant's traffic guy. And these are all by-the-book things. You know, they have books, and they tell you how many people, and they do visual counts and so on, and 5% will come out of Linden, and so on and so forth. But we live in an area, you know, where people take shortcuts all the time, and if you can't get to Main Avenue because Grist Mill Road is impossible, you're going to go down Perry Avenue or Silvermine or some other way, and the same coming from the other side. So I think that the 5%, you know, if we're talking, I think when you look at Perry Avenue and the fact that they put a new lane in there, that was planned for this store. I think it was planned for this store that long ago, so that's probably 3 or 4 years. And they didn't get rid of two big problems. One is coming out of CVS, where you can go right or left, even though you're not supposed to go left. People do it all the time. And the other thing is the railroad track, which runs parallel across every single road coming from the west. So,
And with those 5,000 units on Glover Avenue, DLT, I'm sure they're very determined. I'm sure that there may be a second rail going on there, which is more crossovers.
well, we don't know about the rail, but that's what they call a transit-oriented development, a TOD. And the state gives you a 20% mass transit credit for that on your traffic. But it's interesting. I mean, I know Adolph has been working on this, and I don't know all its numbers, but I believe that the book value for a medium-rise apartment is part of a car, but the Norwalk value for the medium-rise apartment is much more than that. And so, as a result, you're building 5,000 units in an area that's not pedestrian-friendly, where you can't walk across the street to get a coffee at Starbucks. I mean, you'll be Parkway Pie in seconds. And you have to go down Main Avenue to go to the grocery store. So none of these things are being taken into account.
Which is why this is my soapbox thing, sort of. We're really looking at, we want a city planner, and we're hoping that the plan of conservation development is approved and becomes part of the documents. And looking at our common council people, we really want to look at the city holistically and where density pockets are and what kind of pedestrian availability is there and what kind of resources there are. I'm sorry.
Who actually approves the plan of conservation and development?
I think the common council has to do it, and the last one was not approved and made a suggestion.
It was approved. There were corrections, and I worked on it, so I'm guilty too. And I worked on it as a planning commissioner, but we were led by the head of P&Z in Norwalk and by a company that wrote plans. And these are state mandated plans. Every city has to write them. The problem is that they are considered by lawyers to be advisory unless they're adopted. And what happens with planning and zoning organizations is that they are political. I mean, they're appointments, so there's an element of politics in them, and there was certainly an element of politics in ours.